Hello, welcome back to the Phoenix's Tale. I am your host, Gabe. This week we are diving into Prisoner of Azkaban, Chapter 3, The Night Bus. Let's do our recap real quick. So, Harry had left Privet Drive in a fit of anger after blowing up Aunt Marge, and she's bobbing around the ceiling like a balloon, and is now beginning to panic a little bit. As he decides he's going to fly to London and thinking he's got to, make a break for it because he did underage magic. And he was already in trouble with that from last year when Dobby did it, but Harry got the blame. So he's in the process of getting his broomstick and his invisibility cloak, and he senses something watching him. When he lights his wand, he turns to see that there's this giant black dog in the alleyway between a couple of houses on Magnolia Crescent. But before he can do anything else, all of a sudden this purple triple-decker bus apparates to a stop right in front of him, nearly squashing him because he had tripped over his trunk when he saw the dog. And it's the night bus. He gets a ride to the Leaky Cauldron. All the while, the conductor, Stan Shumpike, tells Harry the story about Sirius Black, the escaped convict that Harry saw on the news, the Muggle news, the week before. So, eventually, Harry arrives safely, question mark, at the Leaky Cauldron, only to find the Minister of Magic, Cornelius Fudge, waiting for him. After some discussion about the underage magic Harry accidentally performed and that there will be no punishment, Harry agrees to Fudge's rules to stick to Diagon Alley. So we close the chapter seeing Harry getting settled into 3 weeks of freedom from the Dursleys. And as this is technically... I'm still working to get caught up. As this is technically the first episode of February, I want to wish a very happy birthday to Arthur Weasley on the 6th, to Luna Lovegood. I gotta show Luna. I got Luna. Luna Lovegood on the 13th, and Newt Scamander on the 24th. I did see some references to Pavarti and Padma Patil having a birthday in February, but couldn't confirm anything specific to the date, except that it was in February sometime, except for one tiny piece of information that suggested they are on the 6th, or on the 5th, the day before Arthur Weasley. So I'm going to keep the Patil twins on February 5th for now. This week, I want to share some things with you concerning my personal journey over the last couple of years. And it starts with my willingness to try something different. Not only to find clarity for myself, but to also add a bit of fun to my life. We're going to get into some details about, to kind of build on what I was talking about a couple episodes back, when we were talking about everyday magic, and I got into some detail about how I use tarot for myself, but I want to dive into the specifics of that because it's the specifics of that to me that feel important. A couple of years ago, January, I had a massive breakdown. And I had to step back from a family obligation that I didn't want to do in the first place. And it had already taken its toll, and it had only been about 4 months. So I told my family that I will not be doing that anymore because I desperately need to get some help. I mean, everything literally came crashing down on my head in January 2024. And basically I meant therapy. So since I'd already been working on getting into therapy, I needed something else to get me through until I could start therapy, until I could get into somebody. So after telling my family to find another way to deal with that particular issue of my not being able to fulfill the family obligation anymore, I finally settled into a bit of a new routine and slowly began to trust that my family was basically going to leave me alone on this and not bug me about returning to that family obligation, thus allowing me time to calm down and think a little bit. After about a week is when I found some tarot readers and a couple Reiki healers over on Instagram whose messages and energy work actually were calming to me. So after about a month of watching those and leaning into those, I decided to give tarot a try for myself. My mom had a couple of decks that she never used and said that I could have them. So I took the one deck that felt really good to me and I started doing my own tarot readings. If you have watched the episode where I show you one of the tarot decks and how I do my readings and how I sit with intention with the meanings of the cards and everything, the deck that I was showing is the deck that I originally got from my mom that she had already had. Just a little side note. Anyway, this was something that seemed to fit the bill for me at the time because I had no money of my own. I've talked about that a lot. To get the help that I needed to bypass that constant, we're not taking any new Medicaid patients bullshit that I'd been encountering since then. I also wanted to bring some fun into my life because that was the first moment that I had truly voiced to myself just how fucking tired I was about feeling constantly angry, frustrated, stressed, stuck, etc. And I just wanted something, anything fun to do, but also anything that could alleviate some of that anger, frustration, etc. As I said, I have done a more in-depth discussion about this just a couple episodes back, so I'm not going to bore you again with those details. What is important about the success that I've experienced in cutting through the chaos and the noise of my brain is that I leaned into the placebo effect of it, basically making the cards say what I wanted them to. I am intentional when I'm sitting with the meanings of the cards, to write down from the, what do they call that book? The book that comes with a tarot deck and gives all the cards meanings and stuff. I'm very intentional about that. And I sit with it and I write down only what feels right in that moment. Again, I went into more detail of that a couple episodes back. So I'm not gonna recap all of that. I will, however, let you know that it has worked for me. So let's walk through the key points over the last couple years that have gotten me to where I am now. I didn't realize just how tightly I had been holding on until I finally was able to start letting go. Not unlike Harry. I mean, when we think about how the last chapter ended, Harry did the best he could to not lose control of himself and accidentally perform magic until he was pushed to the brink and pushed to the breaking point by Aunt Marge. And for me, that shift really came in the form of something unexpected, and that was doing tarot readings for myself. So in a way, I guess you can say that my night bus didn't arrive, roaring out of thin air like it did for Harry, but it did appear right when I needed a ride through the chaos, as it were. And what started as casual curiosity has quickly become a way to make sense of things when life has felt like it was just speeding and shifting and doing all these things all at once and still feeling very chaotic to me. Since then, the journey has been far from smooth. I will be honest about that, but it's been full of some surprising turns. It includes realizing that there is a soul connection, spiritual connection. I talked about that in depth a couple episodes back too, that I had enjoyed for about a year and a half before realizing that it was over. Realizing just how bad my mental health had gotten not long after I disconnected, as I talked about in that previous episode, from that person I was connected to. Because the daily, and I am not shitting you, daily, well, near daily doom scrolling of political content since, I don't know, roughly a year before the election in 2024. So the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. It had been almost 2 years, almost daily, when finally Labor Day weekend, I realized all of this. And so I solved the problem by unfollowing every single political content creator I was following on TikTok. I don't follow any of them anymore. And it took another month or so for me to notice this, but I slowly started realizing that my mood overall was no longer so prickly, so crunchy. And the flurry of synchronicities and confirmations, or however you want to call those, that have led me to recording this very episode. Just to give a time frame, in the previous episode I talked about the disconnection from that soul connection occurring over the summer. So it was about a month and a half-ish. I don't remember the exact timing of it. I just remember, I got to disconnect. And I did. And then Labor Day weekend, this was 2025, so 6 months ago, roughly. So it was the beginning of October when I realized things are a bit calmer. Things, the rough edges of my mood had been sanded down a little bit and wasn't so anxiety inducing anymore. And looking back, it feels like, to me anyway, to reconnect to Harry's story a little bit, is that those realizations were my version of Harry stepping off the night bus. He's still a bit shaken out about what happened. He's still unsure about what's happening next. But he's finally in a place where he is safe enough to breathe and to think. And I can feel that same what do I want to call it? Restless readiness now, if that makes any sense. Like the gate is about to open. It's not about running away from something anymore. It's about being ready to run toward what is finally aligned for me and what will be aligning for me as I keep taking these steps forward. In fact, I got a really cool story to tell about that. In the episode where I was talking about those 4 or 5 key messages from the universe that I received beginning in December, that led me to get to a point where I don't doubt, I don't worry, I don't stress about getting the work done. Let's just get caught up as best as I can. It's going to be messy, but let's just get caught up the best I can and start moving forward. this particular message I did not talk about in that episode, but it was a powerful one for me. The overall message of that, and it was a channeled message from somebody that I currently follow on TikTok. The overall message was about being in this waiting energy of being off the old timeline. I'm no longer on that timeline of lack and stress and anxiety. Even though my current circumstances outwardly haven't changed, it's definitely changed in me. So I'm off the old timeline, but I'm not yet onto the new one yet. And it was described as a racehorse in the pen, waiting for the gates to fly open right as it starts the race. And that's where I'm finding myself now, is I'm in that pen. I'm waiting for the doors to fly open. My muscles are kind of tense, but my heart rate's steady. I'm more focused. I know what I have to do. I'm just now waiting for that gate to open so that I can finally run. In fact, I discussed in the final episode of Chamber of Secrets, Dobby's Reward, that the most important messages that I followed to get me to this point where I can finally get the work done to get caught up on the podcast episodes, as well as some fun social media content series that I'm currently working on for TikTok. And I'm posting them here too. So if you're watching this, it's here on my channel. And it's the Great Lock-In series. But going back to the racehorse analogy quick, that's where I am simultaneously seeing why the last 13 years had to happen for me, as well as why I got off track at the beginning of December, and all of these messages start coming in, and that has been the point of that 2-month period of not doing any content creation, podcast episodes, etc., is that was the stillness that I needed. That was those few moments in the pen waiting for the doors to open. I needed to stop in stillness for a little bit and get focused. Like, okay, the race is about to begin. You need to start gathering your thoughts about what you need to do moving forward while you're waiting for the gate to open. I hope this makes sense. It made sense to me when I was making my notes and writing my episode. So I hope that makes sense. But let's get back to Harry. He ends the chapter falling asleep in a new place, somewhere safe, but still unfamiliar, because, he'd been to the Leaky Cauldron a couple of times, but he'd never stayed as a guest. So now he's got this newfound freedom. And he falls asleep almost instantly because he's in a position where he is allowed to just let go of all the shit from the Dursleys and relax. He's not in trouble with the Ministry of Magic. Aunt Marge is okay. Memory's been modified. He doesn't have to deal with the Dursleys for 3 weeks before heading back to Hogwarts. He can relax and he can breathe. And that's where I have been for the last couple months. So the stillness doesn't feel like punishment anymore. I do want to mention that. It doesn't feel like punishment anymore. It does feel stretched and ready. Like my soul is exhaling after holding its breath for so long. It's like, okay, the race is about to start. Things are about to change. And there is movement under the surface, but it's a lot quieter now. It's a lot more content. It's a lot calmer. It's a lot more excited for the possibilities, and the panic has softened into something a little bit more steady, almost like trust. Not quite there yet with trusting myself. I'm still working on that. But this last week or so, since I committed to let's get caught up, no matter how messy it looks, has felt so much better for me. What's strange, though, I do want to mention this, is that is how unnatural this new calm, trusting vibe feels when the world around me is still so loud with responsibility and specifically those unspoken responsibilities that I mentioned before. My mom and my brother specifically assuming, oh, yeah, my daughter will be home. I got to work tonight. Or, my brother, oh, sister's got that. She can take care of that for me without doing the common courtesy of asking. Yeah, starting to set those boundaries. Could you at least ask? As though you don't know what my schedule is, and, show me that respect. Start to send those boundaries. But it's still a lot of uncertainty, but I don't feel so stressed and anxious about it anymore. I keep hearing messages of surrender, have faith, wait for the sign, and trust your intuition. Because even though, yes, I have committed to getting back on track, and, surrender, have faith, wait for the sign, trust yourself, trust your intuition, aren't landing with this. They are landing in other areas of my life still right now. This is just one key aspect of it. There are many where I still have to do the work there. But honestly, it feels weird kind of being in that weird space of not on the old timeline, but not quite on the new timeline. I am that racehorse waiting for the race to begin. It's weird. It feels really weird. And it goes against every habit that I have built trying to survive. But I don't know, maybe that's part of the lesson. That learning to hold both truths at once, that part of me understands that, having to survive in the real world here, I need an income. I would like my own place. I talked about moving back to California. I need to get a car. And the real world, responsibility of, or the stress of, my mother's getting older. She's battling cancer, but she's still working 30 hours a week. But at the same time, holding a sense of things are starting to align. So don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. The only thing I could do is to keep moving forward. So it's just this weird space of seeing my circumstances being the same, but knowing things are now different on the inside. Again, I hope this makes sense to you. I really do. And speaking of, let's talk about that a little bit, because I've started noticing that my body is starting to feel different now. My shoulders don't feel so tight. My jaw doesn't feel so tight. I notice I tend to clench my teeth when I'm really stressed. And it's almost as though my body started knowing this before my mind caught up to all of it. That I'm safe enough right now in this moment to stop bracing for, is mom going to have to retire before I can take over? Because I want to take over financially for my family. I want to take care of my family because they do love me. I'm just no longer providing emotional support. Have no problem with the financial support. I absolutely do that, because I want them to, I want to take care of them too, because we've stuck together pretty much this whole time and helped each other out this whole time. We've always been together as a family with that. And, you know, I don't want to leave them hanging while I'm living the high life, assuming, you know, this blows up for me financially a lot bigger than I'm expecting. No, they're coming with me. They're not coming with me to California, but the success is coming with me. They'll all get a new car eventually. You know, I've got big plans, like I said, but, you know, even though I'm still feeling like I'm in this waiting mode and not knowing so much of what lies ahead of me, there's still something that's quietly shifting. And I'm going to wrap that part up by saying what I said in the other episode, that this is the first time in the last 13 years, the last couple months, despite being off track here and having to get caught up on 2 months worth of work for myself, has been the best I have felt this entire time. So fingers crossed. So let's go back to Harry. He's drifting off to sleep at the Leaky Cauldron, teetering on the edge of 3 unexpected, glorious weeks of freedom. And it feels as though I'm doing the same. You know, I'm kind of out of the worst of it, but I don't know what to expect. You know, that's how I see Harry in this chapter, especially toward the end of the chapter. You know, lying, you know, I'm at the edge of the old version of me where the new one hasn't quite begun. So it's uncomfortable, it's awkward, it's weird, but it's also honest. And it is such a relief. It is such a relief. And maybe all of this mess, all of it, everything that I am, and maybe it's apropos that this feels messy talking to you, but I don't think I could re-record it to make it all nice and neat and tidy. So I'm not even going to bother trying. This felt messy delivering it to you, but maybe that's what healing feels like. I know it's messy. We all know healing is messy, but it's, I don't know. I can't think of a better way to wrap that up. But yeah, I like to think that I'm that racehorse. I'm just waiting for the gates to open so I can just run and do what I need to do. So that's going to do it for me this week. Let's wrap this up. As much as I would love to share my adventures with my newfound freedom, real life hasn't moved as quickly, like I just mentioned, unfortunately. So I'll be exploring a different topic next week as we get to enjoy Harry's new freedom in Diagon Alley. Not going to be able to put the pieces together on that one next week, but I got a great episode for you next week. Until then, you might want to remember to take your earplugs and your motion sickness potion before you board the night bus. Yeah, it's not a fun journey. Anyway, see you next week.